Hello class. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about where we are. So a few days ago, I turned on week 12 and kind of laid out the tentative schedule. And kind of one of the key things to think about is kind of the objective here, is that basically for the remainder of the semester is that you're showing your mastery of all the skills that we've worked on all semester long. Reading, writing, critical thinking, and reading strategies, the writing process, thinking, meta, the whole nine. So in 12.2, I have a video talking about the argumentation project. So basically what you're doing is you are making an argument. You're pushing a thesis. You're using one of the 5 chapters in Bailey as an anchor push-off point. And you're making an argument about a problem and possible solution, recommendation, about an issue of your choice. Also, what I offer up is some field work. Field work can be what we call primary research, is that you're going out in the field and you're gathering your own research. So one of the things I want to talk about here is I turned this on because everything's an argument, right? So now this is our actual time when we're actually writing an argument. So I'm giving you space here over these last few days to chew on some of these ideas and really read through these and kind of ask yourself some questions. Because one of the things we've been working on is also this idea of audience awareness. The first step of the writing process is about your audience, your purpose. So these are some of the things that you want to think about in terms of what interests you. And so please, hopefully folks have read this and had some time to think about it. And it's just to kind of help you ask some of these questions depending on what your topic might be. So this is definitely a general overview about creating an argument, but regardless of your topic, some things fit with you more than others, And this kind of idea is constantly asking yourself, what kind of evidence do you need? What kind of sources do you need? What is building your scratch outline in terms of your organization? Start to doing some deep level brainstorm. And when I talk about like appealing to your reader, is thinking about what do you want to accomplish? Maybe I want to use emotion. Maybe I want to think about values and principles. I definitely want to use logic because that's where Bailey is using logic, right? He's using research, using data, using facts, using history. This is logic. Also, at some point, thinking about your naysayer, thinking about your counter argument. And I kind of talk about that. So this is basically an outline to help you think about developing a thesis that has an argument in play, that you're really kind of thinking about what do you want your audience to do. Then I ask folks to kind of go through this phase 1, right? So this is this idea of really kind of generating your ideas. Start thinking about maybe what chapter stuck out to you. And there's so much stuff, right? And this is what I'm talking about. It's like, don't skip this. This is important. And think about what stuck out to you. Think about this idea of generating ideas and Brainstorm in chapter 1 about the Southern strategy. And the Southern strategy is Jim Crow 2.0. So how do you see it? How do you see maybe this Southern strategy around the treatment of immigrants, around policing? It's endless of thinking about the topics of how you see this Southern strategy. Or in chapter 2, talking about gerrymandering. Because really, the kind of thinking about what happened in Tennessee recently when the 2 young Black Democratic congressmen were expelled from the state house, that was by a majority of Republicans. That was a result of gerrymandering, right? So if that's something that you're interested in. Or looking at voter rights. Maybe many of you are now at voting age. This is going to be your first election. Or maybe some of you partake in your first election recently, right? So this idea, what I was talking about, is you're looking at these different issues that are out there. Or in chapter 3, looking at, some layer of what is the role of government in America in the role of the environment, whether it's the environment of the oceans, whether it's the unprotection of regulating trains and chemicals, water, poverty, because you could look at it in environmental injustice of slumlords, or looking at at looking at low-income housing, and if you drive around Pittsburgh, Antioch, sometimes why doesn't the owner fix it up, or get rid of all those old shopping carts, or paint the place, right? That could be environmental injustice. Or chapter 4, especially this, what's happening in our society around guns. But this idea of not so much, you could use what Bailey's talking about, is like, we can't have a conversation about guns, however you want to look at guns. And then chapter 5, this level of this thin line between freedom of speech and the First Amendment, or this idea of hate speech, especially thinking about the role of social media. So I have these handouts here, right? So this first one is joining the conversation, right? So this is what I'm talking about, so you're using this handout to start to flush out some ideas. What interests you? What kind of context do you want to look at it? Some of you might, and I've met with you before, you're like, well, I don't like politics. And like I argue, as a college student, you're part of politics. Everything is political. When you were 15 years old and tried to lobby your parents to go to the movies for the first time on your own, that's politics, right? So this could be tied to your major. This could be tied to your passions, your curiosities. This is why you have this freedom, but at the same time, as college students, is that you're flushing out these ideas. You're thinking about them. Maybe you're talking to people in your personal life or in your work life. And I've met with a few of you, and we've kind of talked out some of the chapters that float your boat, right? So this handout was just designed to help you start to think about it. That was the first handout, joining the conversation, right? This one right here. And then start to develop a research question, because a research question is going to help you develop a thesis. Thinking about, what's my purpose? Focus. This is what I was kind of showing you guys a second ago, is like, what do I want to focus in on? Do I want to focus on history? Do I want to focus on this kind of like this outcome of when we don't regulate the trains in this country, when politics say that they can have 200 cars on a train and we don't need that many humans, and we can have grains in the car 1 through 10 on a train, but then car 37 through 50 can have hazardous materials. It's endless. So this is this idea of, and kind of working through this process of narrowing your focus. That's the key here, is narrowing your focus. So that's phase 1, right? And then I talk about the other piece of phase 1 is doing this kind of pre-search, is really spending some time in the CQ researcher and the issues and controversies. And in that module, I show you it. I show you the module from the librarians, like how to access these, but I'll show you. So I'm on the library homepage. If you scroll down to individual databases, here is a CQ researcher. Here is the EBSCO host, where you can look at all kinds of articles. So definitely you can start by doing some pre-search to see what's out there on your topic. Or if you're kind of up in the air with multiple topics, you can look here. Also, here's the issues and controversies. So see what's out there. Maybe you want to look at arming teachers. Maybe you think that's a solution to school shootings. So maybe you want to look to see what kind of information is out there. Or this idea of plastic bottles in the ocean and that impact, right? So it's endless of what you want, whatever you want to look at, but start to get that pre-search muscle in your mind working. So now I'm back to 12.6, that kind of the detailed pre-search brainstorming, right? It's really use those to flush out these ideas. So here in 12.7 is kind of this sample brainstorm, right? So we'll just pretend, I'm talking as Marcus, the student, and he's kind of gone through this process. He's using all his tools, and he's thinking about moving to crafting a proposal and eventually a draft. So for him, he's thinking that something that interests him is this idea of transgender teens in the United States. And he wants to build on chapter 5. And here are some of those, some golden lines that stuck out to him, right? So after going through this whole 12.1 through 12.6, kind of flushing it out, right? So this is what I was talking about, this idea of these broad ideas, right? Different parts of the country have different views of religion. If anyone's paying attention to what's happening in Florida or in the South, where it's called you cannot say gay laws, right? There's just all kinds of ideas, or even this kind of progression of politically as a nation, kind of where we've been for a while. But also kind of like this is just this broad kind of just brainstorm, like where this all is happening, these kind of different ideas. So this is this idea of this kind of just broad, just kind of see what's out there, poke around the CQ researcher, poke around issues and controversies. Then start to ask yourself a question. So here Marcus is asking himself a question. It's talking about using this hate speech. Like I've heard Marjorie Taylor Greene talk about that parents that want to support a transgender teen should be charged with child abuse and that it's body mutilation. You know, but also this idea that the hate speech of how, whether it's happening in schools, whether it's happening in houses of worship, in communities, social media, using this kind of hate speech, whether it's to identify to use a bathroom. Also, there's an issue with participating in sports, right? So this is what Marcus is saying is a problem in his community. So maybe his community is the whole United States. Maybe his community, if you notice, he keeps using Americans. So this is kind of his question. So then in your brainstorm, here are some possible answers. You start to flush them out and look at them from different perspectives. Look at them from different angles, including your own, so that you can move towards a research question. So here he's moving towards a research question and really kind of using an anchor around, like when joining that conversation about this is a civil liberties issue. And this is how he's seeing, is that regardless of how one may feel about transgender identity, is that civil liberties, if you guys remember, what are our civil liberties? Remember, we broke down the key documents. So then, saying once again, now that he has his research question, once again, he's working to answer it. So this is what 12.2, starting with the prompt through 12.6, is kind of helping you get to this place and really kind of flush out these ideas. Then, with all that said, he has a working thesis. And his working thesis for this research project is, although the First Amendment supports freedom of speech, there's a difference between intent and impact. That's something from Bailey. On speech towards transgender teens that has deadly consequences. Allowing hate speech, communities across the United States have created a divide that separates a young person's right, causing friction, bullying, and pain. However, communities can honor an individual's rights, tear down the hate, and let high school kids be themselves. So there is his working thesis, that he's covering a problem. He's narrowing his focus. He's not talking about all transgender humans. He's talking about American teens. All right, folks, keep up the good work.